Hello everyone, I am Rohit Vats and we are with the experts who are going to talk about the expectations from this year's budget. I will introduce the experts with us. We have Sudip Bandyopadhyay, market expert. We have senior economist Brinda Jagirdar. We also have Harresh Mehta, who is expert on real estate. And the fourth guest is Gagan Kumar, who is an expert on tax. So before we open the floor for discussions and what we expect from this year's budget, I would just like to ask about that one thing that you would like to see in this year's budget. I would start with Sudeep.
Burden willy-nilly comes back to the central government. So central government needs to spend, and that expenditure obviously needs to be in productive assets. So infrastructure and by default construction will be the priority sector for government to disburse. I will also add one small thing that see the village and the rural India has got a lot of support from government of India during the pandemic and even before. So whether it's a Narega, whether it's MSP, and even direct benefit transfer has benefited a village, a rural poor. Unfortunately, the urban poor haven't probably got that kind of support from the government, and they desperately need some support to ensure that overall consumption cycle picks up. So I will like to see some measures, concrete measures in that directions too.
I would like to go to Brinda ma'am for that. Like, what is that one thing that you would like to see in this year's budget?
I would like to see continuity, and I would like to see the focus remaining on growth. Uh, this time, the economic survey has given a hint that there is some fiscal space. So I would like to see higher capital spending along with some support for specific sectors like exports and MSME, and of course the hospitality and the contact intensive sectors, along with support for vulnerable sectors.
Right. We will come to you later about vulnerable sectors. Which sectors are you referring to? Which sectors should be called, need some empowerment from outside? But before that, uh, Mr. Harresh Mehta is also with us, who is an expert on real estate. So, what do you think, Mr. Mehta? How is it going to be?
I think in the affordable space, if government streamlines all the issues that are there, the different issues, the taxation, the tax people are saying something different, and the IT people. So there are three different laws as far as the affordable thing is concerned. So if all that is brought on one page, it would help.
Right, right. So now I will move towards Mr. Gagan Kumar, who is a tax expert. Do you see any benefits for the common salaried guy?
Thanks, Rohit. Certainly, this is need of the hour because middle class has suffered a lot and has been working from home for the last 2 years. And if you look at their standard deduction, it's same. So therefore, certain additional deduction ought to be allowed for the people who are working from home. And also, the unemployment is increasing like anything. So therefore, what I am expecting in this budget as a tax person is some tax incentives towards the sector which would fuel the employment. So that's the expectation from a tax perspective from my side.
Right. I will again go back to Brinda ma'am and would like to know that what are those key things that, like how would you decode it for the common person who is kind of a layman who doesn't know how to decode a budget, because it's a very complex language sometimes. So what are those things that a common person should keep their eyes on while experiencing a new budget?
First of all, of course, the specific schemes that the finance minister would announce, and we would also know what areas she is focusing on. So that would be one thing. The second, of course, would be looking at the numbers. What has been the revenue collection and what has been the expenditure? And specifically over here, the fiscal deficit number is very important. So, because this really tells you whether the government has any more space for giving support to some more sectors, or are they already stretched and there's nothing more that they can do. So, the fiscal deficit number in the budget is, I think, the most important number. And this will also tell you what are the new schemes that the government is announcing to support which sectors. Of course, tax breaks will be there, and that the tax experts are there to explain that. But I think the common viewer should really look at what is in it for me. Is the government doing enough to bring down inflation? Because spending is something which the government will have to be very careful about. Targeted spending is most important, because fiscal deficit by itself, I mean, now world over, every country is expanding their fiscal deficit, and because they need to support the economy. But where this money is going and how targeted the spending is and what impact it is going to have, that is most important. So, because that will help to keep down inflation. So, the common man who is seeing the budget should get comfort that the government is not spending recklessly, the government is not being populist, and the government is making sure that inflation is kept under control. At the same time, the growth impulses in the economy are given enough attention. There are new schemes, there is capital spending, there is attracting the private sector into government, into private spending, capital spending. And of course, the weaker sections which need support, those sectors would be identified, and government support will be spelled out for them. So I think these are the main things which they need to look out for.
You have broken down the whole process in a really simpler way so that everybody could understand it. Now I will go to Mr. Sudeep. And how do you see the market reacting to the budget? Like, of course, it's not been declared yet, but how do you see, what kind of patterns do you see in the market right now?
Well, I think market has been under pressure for some time because of predominantly what's happening in the global arena. US Fed is going to increase the interest rate very soon, and the foreign institutional investors are positioning themselves, and there's a bit of a risk of mood, and that has caused a significant selling by them in Indian markets. That did result in Indian markets getting corrected. Now, in a way, it's good because pre-budget markets did correct. Of course, we are seeing a bit of a bounce back today, but I think still some distance away from where the market was, let's say about a month and a half back. As far as market is concerned, if there are few red lines, if there is a no tinkering with the capital gains tax, at least though no increase in the outgo, that is definitely a positive. As far as the reliefs are concerned, if there are any major reliefs given in any areas which benefits the common man, I think that should be good. Also, the as Brinda ma'am mentioned, that targeted spending, fiscal deficit is understood, but the market very clearly watches what is being spent on. If it's being spent on productive assets for creating assets which will give results going forward, I think market will appreciate that. Market does understand that there's a need for stimulating the economy, there's a need for supporting the economy. So market won't be too worried about the fiscal deficit number per se. In any case, that's under control, and with LIC disinvestment around the corner, I think that should not be an immediate problem. What is more important is what the money is spent on, which the government will spend, and if it's on the right assets, right account, I think market will appreciate that. Very difficult to speculate because the budget is yet to come. We have to see the budget and then decide, as far as market is concerned, what they will like and what they won't like.
Right. And real estate is one sector which is kind of seeing some kind of downward movement in the last 3-4 years. The boom is not like how it was some 5-6 years, 7 years back. So how do you see the real estate reacting to the budget, or what should be there to give some impetus to real estate, which is kind of a common man's greatest investment?
With me. So,
Yeah, please.
The GST thing has to be addressed. There are multiple GST slabs in different things, and most importantly, for a city like Mumbai, income tax is something. See, there is a lot of redevelopment in Mumbai of old cessed buildings and slums. And to give impetus to these things, if this is treated as a social cause and income tax has been waived on it, the speed at which all this reconstruction will happen will really boost the market. I mean, everyone, it will be a very nice thing.
And so if I ask you in general that how would you define a good budget in current scenario? So what should all be there that we should be looking out for, and then we will call it's a good budget. So Brinda ma'am, I will start with you.
Good budget would be one, of course, the fiscal deficit, seeing where, how it is kept under control, how the government manages to spend the money that it is collecting. Most important, what are the new areas it is focusing on, and what kind of, because we need to create jobs in the economy. So capital spending is definitely important, but into those sectors where there is jobs to be created. And third, I would see is money in the hands of people to spend. So if that comfort is given, if say some tax reliefs or rebates and reliefs are given, then they would be putting more money into the hands of people to spend, will also give them a lot of relief, and will make the markets and the people cheer that this is a good budget.
Right. And because again, I will go back to real estate department, because real estate, as I said, is the only thing that the common person knows, that there should be some kind of profit for them. So, what would be a good budget for the real estate sector?
The real estate sector, if taxes, you must have seen that when the taxes were reduced, the stamp duty was reduced. Of course, this is not a center subject, but stamp duty was reduced. The markets, the people started spending. It is like this, everyone wants a discount. The moment they see a discount, they start spending money. So some perception, that the government gives, that it cares and it is doing something for the real estate. Even like I said, the center can only do GST and income tax. These are the two subjects which the center can help us in real estate. So I think, like I mentioned earlier, if the redevelopment sector is treated as a social cause and income tax is either reduced or abolished totally.
Right. And do you also see any exemption in taxes?
No, so it will be
So,
for the individual tax. If they do some exemption, if they raise the level of the slabs of taxes, that is what would be welcome.
Okay, and the same question is for Gagan. So how do you
so
see? Do you
Rohit,
see any changes in tax structure?
yeah, so Rohit, let me address it in this manner. That currently there are three predominant challenges which the finance minister would have to overcome. First is the unemployment, which we really briefly touched upon. Second is the unfolding situation in Ukraine, and we cannot ignore that geopolitical scenario because that would have a direct bearing on the current account deficit. So, and thirdly, as Sudip ji also touched upon, is the tapering of the interest rate. So, obviously, liquidity at some point has to be reduced in the market to contain the inflation. How do we anticipate all these three issues to be addressed? The way I look at it is that most likely real estate sector may be one of the major beneficiaries because this one sector takes care of a lot of unskilled people in employment. So, keeping in view the Prime Minister's dream project, Housing for All, I am anticipating that possibly the affordable housing limit may be increased from 750 square feet to 1200 square feet. So that would be a major impetus for the real estate sector. The secondly, the way various small towns are being developed, we have seen Kashi Vishwanath corridor or Kartarpur corridor or the other pilgrimage areas, the way they are being developed. So possibly there could be some incentive for hospitality sector, and also because tourism and hospitality sector again can take care of a larger piece of unemployment. And also looking at the geopolitical scenario, you see, if we go by the history, the pandemic in 1918 was followed by First World War. And therefore, the way situation is currently emerging, it would only, assuming there are certain sanctions against Russia, there could be a possibility that countries like China may get emboldened. So therefore, it would require a preemptive action and would probably see increase in defense budget. So, and not to mention that there could be a major payment mechanism for farmers, because farmers have been complaining for non-payment of their dues, particularly the sugarcane farmers. So those are the 3-4 areas where I see that the tax tinkering may happen to address these issues.
Right. So you guys have explained almost all the aspects of budget that we can expect, the good things and bad things that we can expect from it. We will again join when the budget will actually come, and then we will discuss the nitty-gritties of it. But before we close this session, what is that one thing that you would like to see cheaper in this budget? Pick one thing.
I
Brinda,
think
I
one,
will start with you.
sorry.
The one thing that I would like to see cheaper,
Cheaper.
well, it's maybe the energy prices should be kept down, including oil. But I don't know how much of control we have on that, because 80% of our requirement for oil is imported, and oil prices, as Gaganji was just explaining, with the geopolitics being on the boil, I think oil prices could go up. So I would like to see, but I would like to see input prices, not energy and input prices. Okay, let me put it this way. I'd like to see energy and input prices being kept down.
Right. Thank you. So now I will move the same question to first Gagan and then Harresh, and then we will close the session.
So there are two things which I am anticipating, or rather expect, is that the policy should be such that the import dependence is reduced, because the only possible way to contain current account deficit is to reduce our import dependence. And energy, obviously, that is inevitable, that's beyond our control. The second is that at some states should agree that the petroleum products should be within the GST regime, so that possibly can take care of certain certain issue relating to the cost of crude oil and the resultant price of petroleum products in India.
So basically, I was asking everybody about their expectations from budget. You joined late, but so this question is also for you. Basically, we wanted to know how the healthcare sector is looking at the budget.
I think after this, there had been a lot of healthcare transformation after the COVID pandemic. So I think the people really, because they have suffered and they have seen all those hard times, if you talk about the hospitalization, about the diagnostic facilities, reaching to the doctor, about the drug part. So I think the biggest concern today is if the country has to provide the quality healthcare, it has to have a partnership with the public-private partnership. Then only they can provide a affordable and a good healthcare. Number two, the biggest concern was this time the insurance part. So I think there should be a uniform or a transfer insurance policy, and that should also be at the reasonable pricing structure, so that everybody can be covered, and that should also cover the hospital costs, teleconsultation, as well as the physiotherapy and the diagnostic facility. And last but not the least, two things are very important, that this need, because what we have learned from this pandemic, there is a need for the genetic and genomic research enhancement, and we should have more and more facilities for that. Then there was a biggest gap between the primary care and the district care. So that gap has to be, this bridge has to be taken care, so that, because most of the time, this time in this particular pandemic, patients were sent from there. If they would have been given a primary care, this crisis would have been averted. So I think another area where there should be the limit, that the 80,000 it should become a 1 lakh, so that will also be there. And the main concern is that in this GDP, 2.5 to 3% of GDP, especially for this year after the COVID, I think should be spent for the healthcare system, because everybody is looking towards the government, because everybody has suffered and they financially they have lost the job, many pay cuts are there. So this needs a digital healthcare system also, health, so that they can this can be taken care of. So I think this was a main important, because entire population is a now primary concern is a health, especially this pandemic has taught many things to us. So I think the budget, we are all looking towards the budget, how it can take care of all those things.
Thank you, Doctor. And so we have used up most of our time, and thank you all the guests for joining us and giving us your valuable inputs. We will again join once the budget actually comes, and then we will discuss what actually happened from what we have just discussed. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time. We will meet again.
Thank you.
Thank you.